Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to season two of The Ways We Move, the podcast that highlights innovative mobility solutions and the people behind them. I have to welcome back again a great friend of ours in the industry, a wonderful person to talk to. And every time I talk to him or I hear him talk, I learn something about the weather. Yes, the weather. So it is Don Berchoff from True. And Don is a real meteorologist, and he also has a military background in aviation. So he understands a lot about what weather is all about and why. A lot of times the weatherman doesn't get it right. So we talk a lot about what has happened last year, and especially how now with this concerted AAM vision that the United States has going forward into 2026, how weather is now a big part of it. So listen to Don talk about it. It's very exciting. It'll give you also an understanding as to why the weather is not really well predicted. And even the word predicted, he catches me saying this, and you know what? That's not the right word. Anyway, we hope you like this podcast. My name is Nicholas Zard. I am your host on this podcast, and I would love to ask you to please subscribe and please hit that like button. It means a lot for us. It helps us a lot with Google and YouTube algorithms because we want to continue giving you all of these amazing interviews with these fantastic people who, by the way, just like me, work like crazy to make not only advanced air mobility a reality, but they do it on a shoestring budget most of the time, right? So please do that at the very least. And of course, if you want to sponsor one of our episodes and oh, hey, maybe you would like to be on the podcast, you work in innovative mobility solutions, not necessarily aviation. It could be nuclear energy, it could be electric maritime, it could be electric railroad, electric vehicles. Well, reach out, talk to us, and I'm sure we'll find a spot for you. In the meantime, enjoy this interview with Don. Don, he is a well of information. I guess that's the best way I can put it. Enjoy. Hey, welcome back, Don, again. You know, it's almost been about a year since you came on The Ways We Move, and boy, it's been a long, fun ride this last year. And so I hear you have a lot more to tell us, and we're not going to go through an introduction. I guess you could always do an introduction, but people should know you by now. If not, we'll make sure it's right there. But I hear you've got some really interesting things to tell us because a lot of things are happening despite, maybe not having as many flashy titles these days with press releases. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Like we talked about beforehand, it's been a challenging, 7 years for us to,
Yes.
keep the runway. And also, but we've been lucky.
Yes.
We worked hard to, lay some groundwork get some government help and government grants. But I think now, with the national strategy, the AAM national strategy that came out
Yes.
on the 17th of December, which is
Yes.
a day that will probably live in true weather infamy. It was a big deal. It was a big deal because it really is a mandate now
Yes.
on what we have been saying since 2018.
You said it really well. It's really interesting because I remember a lot of people asking, "Well, is this administration for or against?" And I said, "Well, even before they said they were for, and they actually did a lot towards that, but it wasn't very solid or it wasn't very congealed yet, right?" What happened in December was pretty straightforward. I actually even wrote something on electricairmobility.news that kind of tries to get into the weeds of it. We just had Rex, by the way, also who talked about it a little bit more. Um, so I'm very interested to hear what your take is on that because of course you've got the weather insight, and of course every time I talk to you I learn something more. So I can't wait to see what you've been telling them and what they are saying. And them, by the way, is the whole aerospace industry, the FAA, and all the way up to the federal government.
Well, I think, when I saw this and read it, some people, came up to me and said, well, 2018 IPPs for drones never really, took off. And then we had these test beds and they didn't take off. So why do we think, this is going to take off? And I said, well, the better analogy is to the Keysight program in Dallas Fort Worth for drones that
Mm,
started,
mm.
year or two ago. And the fact that, it took a while, it took a long time for us all to really figure out what those standards need to look like. How are we going to work, third party providers into the system? How are we going to ensure they're reliable and secure and, they're trustworthy? And this was all happening while we're building airplanes, literally, right? So I think, I like to use the Keysight as the example. There has been some commercialization out of that, and we still haven't had, the rules out yet. So I think we
Yeah.
are like sitting in that point here. And what I see with the national strategy is this is a an engine. It's definitely a commercialization engine. uh, we can all debate whether those aircraft are going to be certified on time or how long it's going to take, but the bottom line is I would have trouble not believing some of those companies who have been getting and working on their certifications are not going to be ready to support this. And I think for us, for True Weather, it really, the strategy itself is a mandate for, recommendation 2.8, which says we have to have an array of, micro weather sensing capabilities that are networked and collecting data to detect,
Mm.
and to enhance detection of weather impacts, to enhance predictions, and to even go as far as say they want to see aircraft to aircraft communications of weather information, which
Yeah.
by the way, I'm okay with, but there's some work, this is an area that I'm really looking forward to helping because I know that, if we look at the way we've been doing it traditionally, that's not the way we want to do it. And I'm happy to say that I've talked to some people in DOT about it, and we're aligned with the technology in a way it needs to be. So this is exciting for us because this is what we've been building for, and this is the engine now, hopefully, that's going to drive our industry and weather, to a next level.
I'm so glad you said that because that's what one of the things that I walked away from our last talk is that one of the best weather predictions we can get is the aircraft that just landed and tells us exactly what was behind them.
Well, it's not a prediction; it's a
It's not a
data.
prediction.
And
Yes.
that's really important. A lot of I pull that out, Nicholas, because people make that mistake. It's not
Yep.
a
That's
prediction.
what it's
It's
not a
what's
prediction.
happening right now.
It's
And
factual.
though, if you're actually experiencing it for the first time, that is not a good thing either. So, what we need to do is remember that that's one piece of the diverse
Mm.
architecture of bringing real-time weather data, both ground-based and air-based, together. And that data is gonna be actually more important for machine learning later than it is gonna be for real
Yes.
time, because in real time, you're already there. Yeah, you might, you're gonna let people know or other systems know that, "Hey, I'm in something I don't wanna be in," and that will tactically, make a difference, don't get me wrong. But keep in mind, these aircraft, they are battery powered or electric powered. They don't have a lot of energy to get to alternates, and we don't want them in that situation. So, and in my mind, that's too late, right? But what it'll do is it'll be the check, right? It'll be our last check to say something just happened in the last 2 minutes that we didn't know about. Stay out of here. And by the way, that's going to be data we're going to use in our machine learning for our models, which are going to be
Right.
very hyper scale, with including, atmospheric coupled CFD, competition fluid dynamics models to see winds around buildings. And once we get that data set coming in for all this, the predictions will get better, the short range predictions. And that is what I'm excited about because today, the weather industry doesn't really machine learning, and it's kind of voodoo weather because we use an analysis of what we think is happening as our training data sets. And
Yeah.
that gets us so far, and it's
Yeah,
great
it
on the
does.
global scale and the regional scale, but it's not really gonna work on the granular scale because we don't have any data in those subgrids around the analysis. So we don't really know what has happened in the past. And so how do you
That's
build a machine learning model off of something that's smaller than the grid analysis of sometimes 15-kilometer resolution? It's true. So this is why I wanted to do this. I saw
yeah.
this all as the catalyst for us to start getting better weather information, not just for drones and air taxis, but weather writ large.
Yeah. No, no, no. You said it well. Data is only as good as what we have to fill that data in the ground. So that's something that definitely, you made a very good point of that. I'm thinking of something. Maybe it would be good if you explain what IPPs are to our listeners. And I'm going to follow through on resolution I made this year is to talk less and to listen more, because usually I would just jump in and say it. So I'll let you explain what and especially what it means to you and how it's important. And there are a lot of IPPs out there. So go ahead. I'll let you do that.
You want me to talk about why the IPPs are important?
Yes, and what they are, because some listeners might not actually know what an IPP is, or
Okay.
what it does, or where it comes from.
Okay.
So maybe that would
Well, I
be good
got
to
it.
start on that.
So the FAA put out a solicitation. I want to say September. Don't hold me to that. And originally,
Yeah,
they've asked for regional consortiums to put together an ecosystem of partners that can basically run everything from soup to nuts for an AAM mobility mission. So you would need, airspace navigation services, deconfliction services,
got it.
weather, communications. That means your automated data service providers, which have been basically documented in Part 146, that is part of the NPRMS, have to be all integrated, and kind of like what they did in Fort Worth, except they didn't want weather in there for some
Right.
reason. I haven't figured out why people don't think weather's
I didn't know
at the low
that.
altitude.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. But the bottom line is this: is that we're working on that, and FAA wasn't them, by the way. So the FAA, we've been working on NTAP and stuff. So I'm not criticizing the FAA, but the bottom line is they want to bring this all together with aircraft that could fly. And within 90 days of getting the award, whichever regions get the award, they got to commence operations. And they have to use as much existing infrastructure as possible to make that happen. So it's got to be demonstratable pretty much on day one. So there's no really, we're going to do R&D and we promise we'll do this or that. Now, over the 3-year period, you're going to have time then to build and grow. But they'll pick 5 locations, or they said at least 5. And these are going to, there's no money. The FAA is not providing funds for this, or
Absolutely.
they at least are holding that position. And so a lot of it's going to be state, local governments going to have to fund, or you're going to have in kind from the consortium members. And we're going to see that, I'm sure, from the OEMs, and also, other government grants and things like that are available. That's really going to make it happen. So that originally was due on December 7th. What happened
Yep.
was they started delaying it, and then they dropped the national strategy on December 17th.
And that
Now,
was why.
and so
Most likely.
then they updated the criteria and said, now you have to map your solutions to the recommendations in that national strategy. And when I read recommendation 2.8, I just felt like I won the lottery, because before this,
Finally.
people were bringing us in. Like, I can't talk about it. There was 3 or 4 of these regional consortiums that saw it. They were all in with TruWeather before that national strategy dropped, and I'm always going to remember them. But when the
Oh yeah.
national strategy dropped, all of a sudden now they had a map to something that very few companies have: the whole ecosystem. We're the only one, I say. We get into debates, but I mean, we can deliver the whole ecosystem in the first 90 days. So that was a good thing for us. Number 2 was cut. People were writing like 400-page proposals for this, and they said you have to get it down to 18, 5 sections. And then they get you
Yes.
one section, the 6th section, you can have these letters of attestation that could go on, I guess, forever. So you can have a billion pages. But the whole idea was they wanted to accelerate. This is what tells me the government's very serious. They wanted to
Yeah.
accelerate picking those. So that's what that is, right? And you really got
Yeah.
to have your act together as a consortium. There's not going to be a lot of time to fake it. You can't fake it till you make it in this case, right? You're
No, no,
really going to have
no.
to
Yeah.
come together.
I think you said it really well. IPPs are so different from anything that has ever happened before. And we've had some things very similar to IPPs, but the whole 90 days application for me was like, whammo, that's it. And like you just said, the shysters cannot operate in that environment because they can talk, but they can't do. So this is really when the rubber meets the road, although that doesn't fit with what we're talking about. But you're right.
Well, it
That's
meets the
what's really
runway.
special about
Meets
it.
the run. It
It
meets the
means
vertiport.
it meets the runway. And for those who have skids, well, good luck with you guys. Okay. But yes, but that's very true. I think it's really, and you're right. It shows how serious the government is about. And this is, by the way, beyond the administration, right? This is the whole of the country in general. How
Yeah,
serious it is about
yeah,
advanced air mobility.
but I mean,
So
it's really important. I mean, look, it's really important for DOT to be, this authoritative about this because it's a
yes,
mandate now that says, okay, this is important and we need to solve this. So you guys solve it, right? Which is what, we always beg for. We want to have input into it, but then
so
of course we
true.
want money with it. So that makes that's the other like how serious do you guys want to solve the problem, right? So, it's interesting. I think we got here because of 8 or 9 years of learning, right? And I
Yes,
give the FAA and DOT lots of credit.
yes. Oh yes,
It's taken so long, but you know what? I still think we are still a way, we're ahead of Europe in this. We're ahead of, you know, obviously China is ahead a little bit probably, although we don't know how good it is. We always hear
right.
about it.
Yeah,
But but
exactly.
the noises that, they've been focusing on this, EHang and stuff. I think really the Middle East, they're trying to really knock this out. I think Brazil is, ahead a little bit. Not ahead of us, but they're trying to knock it out. I think we're put ourselves back into the
I
the
think
leadership position.
Yeah, I think you said it really well. I think everywhere around the world is fantastic what's happening and everything. I think in the Middle East, I think the one thing that we do know is that is the will of the upper echelon, but everybody else under that is going, how in the world are we going to do this, right? So of course they're looking at EASA, they're looking at FAA. You're right, China. I think, well, yeah, it's such a wonderful little closed system, so you can do almost anything you want there, but we don't really know what's going to happen. By the way, I'll be going to Guangzhou pretty soon this year, and I will be flying on an EHang, so I'll be really interested to see what they do. But I love the way that they termed it low altitude economy.
Yeah, that's
Brilliant.
and what I tell people is there's a weather tax on the low altitude economy that we all pay for. Like today, when you fly, you don't there's some percentage of your airline ticket is weather chaos, weather, that affects
That's
the
true.
system, that costs the
That's
airlines
true.
money. You
That's
pay
true.
it. You pay it. And people say, "Oh, well, free weather data." And I say, "Well, it's not free. It's costing you guys a lot of money." And until the passenger's gonna pay it until they demand better, efficiency, effectiveness, and reliability, it's gonna come out. That's what we're trying to get ahead of, right? We're gonna get you 30%. Our goal is to get 30% more flight time when you normally would be canceled or delayed because of the ability to see what's happening with certainty now rather than just trying to use a weather app or use the current weather systems, which, by the way, the FAA and DOT has said the current aviation weather system, the current industry of weather cannot meet this requirement.
Nope. Nope.
We, this is not true weather saying this now. This is the experts. So this is
This is
where we believe that, we have the solution and we've just got to grow now and build. But we have the whole ecosystem really kind of in our framework, and we have really solid minimal viable product that we can really jump at in the first 90 days and really execute. Yeah, so this is the weather tax. We're not trying to, safety is important, but you don't hear me talk about it because I know if we have better data, we're going to be safer. So let's make the investment. Let's be safer. Let's reduce risk, but let's make them more money. I wanna get them
yeah.
flying. I wanna keep them
I
flying.
I have such a great story to tell you, and I thought about you the whole time. We were stranded in Lisbon because it was raining, and we were flying older 767s, and guess what was not working? The windshield wiper. But guess what? They had to fret an empty 767 the next day to come and pick us up. All 200 of us had to be lodged in a hotel. So think about $200 a pop, right? For a what? $500 piece of equipment. And by the way, Lisbon has a huge MRO, and it behooves me as to how they do not have agreements on something as trivial as a 767 windshield wiper. So there you again, that's your story. And so to add to your point,
So in
yes,
that case, the root cause was a windshield wiper. The contributing cause was weather.
And
We
and and
weather's
and
weather's a
what's even worse
big
about it,
cost.
the bad part about it is the business management side of it. By tweaking the profits, by streamlining anything, you can't work with a local MRO that has these windshield
Right.
wipers for the and then it's better to have fret an empty airplane and the other one has to go empty. So $300,000 later, that $500 piece, I mean, where's the so yeah, anyway, so I
That's the
think
way
not
I'm
only
just
with
telling you, it's the same way with weather. Like when I with our weather, with the way the weather system is used today, the strategy, everything, it's so 19th, 20th century. And
it
here's what I'll
is.
tell you is that the airlines, like United and others, they do the best. They do have big weather teams and they are actually spending money and stuff like that, but they can't control the whole environment
No, no,
because they don't
no, no,
control air
no,
traffic control and air traffic
no.
management. And
Exactly.
I used to sit in those meetings when I was at NOAA, and we used to have something called the COSPA discussion. And the negotiation was between FAA and the weather and FAA and the airlines about how many aircraft are you going to allow to get through today if we have that thunderstorm event. And then, the problem is yet the airlines are stuck with what the government decides, and the government's using much older technology. So this gets back
Yes.
to my other point is that
Yep.
this is why below altitude, by having the third party now coming in and doing the innovation and driving this in the system, you're going to have the air traffic system that's supporting AAM through ADSPs and third party are going to have the better technology. You're not going to run into the same frustration if you're a Joby or an Archer or E Technology, Eve or Whisk, if you have the right weather systems. And so that's what the EIPPs are going to prove, right? We're going to have hopefully authoritative weather from a company or a source that can use shared infrastructure, bring all that data in. Yes, they're going to have to pay for it, but guess what? They're
Of
going to pay
course.
a lot less than what they're going to save. And
That
it's even
was
impossible to model it right now because nobody collects that kind of data because they just think, the weather's what it is. So I'm just not going to worry about it. I'll just blame the weather and move on.
yeah, I think you said it really well. It's about having better data, better understanding, and that will save us money in the long run. And doesn't it go back to that very simple point everybody knows about? You have to spend a little bit to make a lot more. And it's not just keep on saving. That will make you have a lot more money in the end. Of course, that's
Well,
part of it, but
the
you've got to
problem
spend.
is the problem is there's a lot of people in decision making positions that don't understand weather, but
Yep.
they think they do.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the problem.
Yep.
That's why I give credit to those 3 or 4 early adopters in the IPP because they got it, right?
Yep.
And they see it. And some of it was because they had air traffic controllers on their teams, and they said, "Oh" see, the air traffic controllers if I whenever I know there's an air traffic controller in a company that is talking to me about something, I know I got the right person because they are the
Yes.
ones that live it every day,
Yep.
changing runways, and figuring out the flow and they see it, right? And everyone else, they just use their app or whatever. But meanwhile, people they're living it. So that's the way it is, right?
I agree. My best meeting last year was with the Augusta airport in Georgia, where we're all meeting and all talking and everything. And guess who was right next to me? The local ATC guy. And I had the best time because I was just looking at his face the whole time. I could see when he was doing this, I could see when he was doing that. And I was just like, man, I got to interview this guy. Of course, at the time, nobody wanted to talk FAA or ATC, rightfully so. But then I got to talk to him, off record and everything. And I said, what do you think of all this? He goes, interesting. And I said, "All right, what do you mean by that?" He goes, "How the hell are we supposed to integrate all of that stuff with what we have right now?" I said, "Yeah, isn't it interesting, right?" And so I'd love to get these guys to come out and talk
Ray
more
Ray
often about.
Adams. Ray Adams, my hero. Like he's been steadfast through this whole thing and I appreciate him because he's believed in what we've been doing and he's been a supporter from day one.
Yeah,
But the fact is it's the folks that really understand how difficult it is today
exactly.
within the current system, and now they know with these new aircraft, with energy power, lighter, it's gonna be different, even harder, and so we really that's what drove me to get ahead of this in
Yes.
2018, and
Yeah.
I'm doing this for not I'm doing this because I wanna solve this problem, right? Because I saw it coming, and it's also gonna help the rest of the all other verticals, all other industries, if we can get better weather data to low altitude, it's gonna spill over. So I'm just really happy that things are turning out the way they are right now, and I hope we can deliver, right, on what the promise is. That's our next thing. We have to deliver.
I think there's no doubt about it. So tell me a little bit more. Now there's an opening to two great wins, I think, from last year, by the way, is STOL ports are finally getting to the FAA, which on a financial level, especially on the infrastructure side of things, making sense of vertiports only with drones and eVTOLs very
Yeah.
difficult. Now, Stowport, I can make sense of it because now airplanes can land, helicopters can. I mean, everything can land. This is really great and everything. And now they're finally getting the weather piece, which means better understanding of weather, means better predictability, better operations, more money coming in, and everything. So, tell us a little bit about how do you fit in all of this? How are you helping move the needle there? So now we can get into the weeds of it.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is 30% of, GA and helicopter and business jet operations that are canceled and delayed due to weather today could have flown. And so we know that we got to get them flying in as close to 100% of operating windows that work for them as possible. And of course, it's going to be different based on aircraft. And that's why we need a system that can manage all that information and make sure that we're nailing it for every aircraft, for the type of aircraft, and we're not grounding people that shouldn't be grounded, and we're getting people up that should be got up, right? Now, the
Yeah.
challenge is at these vertiports or stall ports, it's going to be, the spacing of the aircraft is going to be critical in order to drive revenue and landing fees for the vertiports. And we know that the better your wind data is at very high precision, especially in an area where there's buildings and other things that could be impacting the flow, which we can't see today, by the way. There's no way of knowing. And we really don't
Mm,
know what the winds are doing below 5,000 feet away from an airport today,
that's
anywhere.
right.
And I could show you the stats on the models and how they could be off 20% of the time by 30 or 40 degrees in real time at the winds at
Wow.
like, you know,
Wow.
300 feet above the ground. So now you got that mixing with the buildings, and you really don't know, right? So what we want to do is make sure they know. And we want those angles of attack to be well planned for the operators because they need to hit that angle of attack where the winds are exactly what the best wins. And if they hit that at the right point, they're going to save about 20% power just on landing.
That was gonna say, yeah, so the energy bill is gonna go down, the insurance is gonna go down. This is actually very important. This is very crucial.
And not only that, you're going to be able to carry more weight if you don't have to carry any more reserve than you need. So, they're going to carry 50% reserve. Maybe they don't have to if we have this high resolution data. Now you can carry a little more weight, you know, and you have a little more room to get to an alternate, and I could go on and on because remember, I was an aircrew meteorologist. I have 300 flight hours in the 1980s, so I understand how the system works. I understand that back then it was fuel, and of course you had a lot more flexibility, but I remember them taking stuff off the aircraft, because they had to put more fuel on. And the bottom line is if you have so much uncertainty, you're dropping a lot of money on the floor. So it's money, it's safety, it's insurance, and it's wins alone. I haven't even talked about, like, let's talk about, dangerous stuff. Like, winds don't have to be dangerous to be costing you a ton of money, right? But now let's talk about wind shear. Let's talk about turbulence
Yes.
and maybe, having that aircraft avoid the turbulence that we only could see with our system now, and that would change the flight route, and maybe we'll be changing the configuration of approach more often than we do at an airport right now. Because if those winds move just a little bit at the airport, they're gonna go big time maybe around buildings.
Boom.
Remember, airport winds are useless. I wouldn't even look at them, really. So, because you're out of the window of where they could be relevant, right? This is what we gotta do. Then we got ceiling and visibility, which, I know someday they'll fly IFR approaches and all that, but that's not gonna happen in our, next 3 to 5 years. So we're gonna need to worry about where are the patches of fog that we can't see today, that we
Yes.
don't have digitally
Yes.
captured in our
Yep.
data.
Yep.
What about the low ceiling? What about the rainfall intensity? This is a big deal, not for danger, but because of battery use, right? It
Of
increases your
course.
your power use, and they care about rainfall intensity more than they care about whether it's raining or not. So we want to get much more micro scale on the rainfall intensity for these short routes that may go from Newark to this, the Vertiport in Manhattan or something. Biggest one though, the biggest one, you got to get the weather well understood, and you have to be reliable 3 hours before you take off, because you cannot bring families out to a vertiport and tell them when they get there, I'm sorry, but the winds are just,
Can't
they're not,
fly.
we heard through the flight that just went that you can't go. And now they're not gonna get to, they're not gonna get to the airport on time because you can't, because the whole idea of this is you're not gonna sit in traffic. So this is gonna be a major problem. A lot of people aren't thinking, they're just thinking
No.
right now.
Yep.
And quite frankly, the pilots, that's what they care about. But that's
Yeah.
so when the pilots say we don't need better weather, it's because they don't think they do, because they're not thinking about the business side of it. We got to get the COOs, CEOs to
Yes.
recognize this is an anticipatory thing. And
Yes.
how are you gonna send out an Uber Black? How are you gonna,
Right.
you know? So
What are you
this
going to do
is
now?
this right. This is the stuff that can really hurt the industry in the early days. And that's why I'm proud to say that we're ready to bring this on day one, not day 3 years out, because that's where we would have been if we didn't do what we did.
So tell us a little bit about how do you see all of that moving forward? Especially, I'm thinking in the lights of like having everything achievable within 3 months. I mean, that's a short amount of time, especially to get a bunch of people working together, aligning everything within the same strategy. How is that? How do you see that happening?
Well, I can't speak too much about it,
Yeah.
who's on these teams, but let's just say that TruWeather's already integrated before in some of these ADSPs.
Okay, that makes perfect
All right.
sense. Right.
And we've already deployed new weather sensors in Dallas in our test bed. These are wind lidars, vertical wind lidars, things that we don't use today in
Oh,
aviation for the
really?
most
Yeah.
part.
Okay. Okay.
And we've got extra ceilometers and ceiling height indicators between airports. So we've already integrated that into our APIs, and that's already getting into these systems. So we've done that's our 90 days. Let's take
Wow.
the
You're right.
existing weather, and also if they want to throw out a couple of lidars, we could do that within 90 days easily, integrate that within our system and get that back out. So now we have real data. We can alert on that data. Like if we see the winds aloft or off, and they want to know if they're going to go, if they're above 15 knots or whatever, and then the model is showing 10 knots, but we have the real data, it'll alert them. And so we have that already built in. And we also have a simulation we're running live around Dallas Fort Worth. It's a small area, 2 by 2, runs every hour. We take the winds and we run them in the CFD model, and we can see what the winds look like around buildings. And so we could bring that
Wow.
out
Yep.
also. So
Yep.
that's our first 90 days that we could bring out. Now, some of that, we need some resources, some we don't. But
Of course.
but the bottom line is we have built the system and we are integrated. Not everything's integrated. The simulation I'm talking about still needs to be integrated into ADSPs, but everything else is integratable today. And they need to then, these other companies who have been working like in the key site, right? They're UTMs now or PSUs. They have already been integrating. And so I think, you can
Wow.
have, I mean, we're not going to be running a perfect scenario here in 90 days, but everything
It's
that,
a
you
working
know,
one.
everything that True Weather can do, and whatever it is that say our operators can't integrate, the operators can't integrate, we have the meteorologists that can backfill that information with, you know, real eyes on the target until we get the automated systems all tied together. So we can run a very safe, weather safe operation at much higher resolution and scale and precision than is possible today through the current system with the ecosystem that we have available
We
that we
have
built.
right now. So tell us a little bit about the tools that you actually use. I mean, LiDAR to detect to detect wind patterns and all. Tell us a little bit about the actual tools that you're using, and then we
You
can talk about how they are arranged.
Well, do you want me to do a real quick are you prepared for a screenshot that may or may not work?
Absolutely. Let's try it out. You know what? It's a first. Let's try it out. We'll see if that works.
All right, so it says here riverside.com wants to enter picture in picture automatically so you can use it on the top of other tabs. So what do I do? Allow this time?
I would allow. Let's see it. Guys, this is a first. We're doing something we've never tried before.
All right, so we're gonna do a screen share. All right, and we're gonna do a entire screen, and we're gonna share, and then
There
we're
we
gonna go
go.
to my website and show you live
Fantastic.
something I did not practice today. Whoop,
Oh,
you don't wanna see that.
wow.
I was looking
Nope.
at the weather. I was looking at something else today there. So let me see. Why is it I can't find the, oh, here it is. Could you see my screen now?
Yes, yes, we can. So, yeah, I guess we'll have to. Yeah, you want to? I don't know if you. Is there any way to? Yeah, try this one.
How do I make you
Oh, sorry.
disappear?
Let's
Disappear.
see.
All right. There's my, oh, that's not it.
That's
Here's
the other one
my,
again.
yeah, hold on. Give me a second.
I love technology. Sometimes I wonder,
Let
like,
me,
who actually
well, this is
designed
what I
these
do. If
things and who tested all these things.
I shut that, that'll get me here. And then this gets me here. And then how do I get rid of
But
you?
then this, well,
I
we'll
just
just move
moved
it
you.
out of the way. Yeah, we'll just move it out of the way until, yeah. All right.
All
Okay.
right.
So that's,
So this is our
wow.
Fort Worth test bed. And what I'm going to do is show you real quickly, just
And
a couple things.
you can move us out of the way until later anyway. Yeah. Okay. So
Can
there
I
we
hide?
go.
If I hit hide, will you hide or
I don't know. We've never
no?
tried this. So this is,
All
guys,
right.
this is like live and I'm not going to edit it. This is the way
This
it
is
is.
how, but this, you know what I want to say? This is how agile True Weather is. All right. So here's our screen, right? So now, right now, in this, and I haven't looked at this today, so I hope everything is working properly. Right now we have our METARs. That's it. That's the Dallas area. That's the
Wow.
size
They're
of the
spread.
METARs.
They're
See how
very
spread
spread.
they are? So in this
Wow.
area here, according to the FAA, there's no way of knowing what's happening in that area right there. Okay.
Can you tell people what METARS is so that they also understand?
Yeah, these are the weather systems at the airports. These are the only approved sources of weather data you can use to make flight
Wow.
decisions
Yeah.
today, from a real
Yep.
weather station, right? So
There's some
now,
gaping holes there or gaping
right.
pathways.
So the next thing we do is under the new ASTM F38 standard, which I help lead and help create, you can now potentially bring in more observation sites that don't give you ceiling and visibility, but they give you, some wind or things like that that you might be able to use. All right, and these have to be, uh, um, they have to be trusted enough to meet the standard, the new weather standard. You're not going to be allowed to just put any weather data in here. You've got to
Good. Yeah,
have
of course.
it's somewhat certified. Now, the other point I want to show you is we have these lidars now, and I'm going to show you what these look like. There's four of them. You can see those black dots.
Yes.
Those are four lidars now that are sitting in an area around our test bed. Okay. So I'm going to show you what the wind lidar does. And I don't know what it's going to say or what it looks like today, but here it comes. All this stuff. This is the real wind aloft right now. Man,
So
that's
this is
pretty.
real
Yep.
life data.
Live data up to 900 feet, 10 layers, 80
Whoa.
meters, 8 knots, winds of 252 degrees. All right. Now, I'm not
Bingo.
saying, and I'm just going to pull up one here and see if there's any difference. Well, there is. The winds are stronger up to the north. Again, not that these are earth shaking, but again, just to show you that, the winds are 2 knots
This is
stronger up to the
and
north. And I have seen days when these winds and the model that we use for you to fly could be off 50 to 100% in speed and 20% or 30% in direction in real time. So this is
which is
going
a
to give us
perfect
real
tool.
data.
And that's a perfect tool for an operator. That's what an operator wants to see. If I go there, I'm going to meet that. Therefore, I'm going to need more, energy, or I'm going to have to anticipate blah blah blah, so on and so forth. So, this
Down
is
to the knot. You'll be able to make your energy calculations down to the knot. Today, you have to probably have 5 or 8 knots of uncertainty built in. Now, this has all come together, and here's some other stuff we put in this. This is we're now pulling together. These are all our networks and some of the Fort Worth City networks. So we're actually bringing in road weather data now that we could see for intermodal. And this will give you at least, tells you if there's ice or precipitation. And so this all come together. And where we're going towards is this. This is live. You can see the time, January 12th. We run this every hour now in this area in Elizabethtown. This is taking the Weather Service high rapid refresh model, which is a decent model, but again, it could be off 20 or 30, 40% in real time. And it shows you what we do when we take that and bring the buildings in. Now, today is not a very windy day, but you could see around the speedway, this is showing you the errors in wind direction compared to what you're using in the model. It's showing you the winds are off in direction by 40. It was showing you earlier, it was off by 40 degrees. Look at the wind swirling around here.
Whoa.
So
You
these
can
are the,
see it, yeah,
yeah, and this is not a bad day. This is just, but that really impacts your approach if you're in an area,
completely.
right? And you can see again on the right side. So this is the speed. We're going to look at the speed, I think, a little bit that changes when you have buildings and things like that that begin to impact your building. But today's not a bad day, but I've seen days where the speed has been like this whole thing has been colored in two colors, chartreuse and yellow, because the winds were actually orange, but because the buildings were really slowing down or speeding up the winds, you could see the differences even at altitude. So this is what, once we get the LiDAR data in here, which we don't have in here yet, this is just a model, but the LiDAR data will get in here. We will rerun this model with better initial conditions, more accurate. And then we will use the LiDAR data and the data off the aircraft to improve this and run a machine
Exactly.
learning model. All
So you're
right.
going to use this as the background or the foundation, and then use a lidar to give us extra perception. I guess
Much
extra, yeah,
extra precision that is missing
precision.
today. If you just run a model today like this and put the buildings in, it's still going to be off some days, big time. But if you get the real data in there, that's when the certainty really increases. And that you got to have the
Wow.
certainty, because if you don't have the certainty, people have to plan every time for that uncertainty.
And that costs money.
That
Costs a lot
costs
of
money.
money. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh
So I'll
wow,
shut
this is
this
really
off now.
fantastic.
I could show you more, but that's enough for now, right? So how do we stop screen share? Let's
That's
see
a
here.
good question. There we are. We're back. Hey,
That
that
was
was really
live.
excellent. That was a first, by the way. We've never done that before. We did not rehearse this, obviously, as you might have noticed, but it worked really well. That
That's
that
all
is really
live.
amazing.
That's what we're going to bring into
And
the
that's live.
IPP.
Yeah,
All
and
that
that's live.
stuff is ready to go. Except the simulation, we might need a
Of
little
course.
money for that, but we could get it going in 90 days. There's no doubt about
And
that.
that's the beauty of it. And so obviously the repercussions at a national level, we could do that almost anywhere, and eventually it will have to be brought in there. And is that something that, yeah, exactly. That means the
I will say
more,
one thing on the simulation. It's still early. We have to do more validation on it. We got to tune it. I showed you something that still needs more work, but
of course. Yeah.
but that's part of this is learning, because even the weather models we have today aren't perfect. So you just got to use them under conditions where everybody understands what they're getting. But once we get the data collected, we'll be validating our model against it and tuning it, right? And once we get that LiDAR data in there, and we're not there.
Yeah, welcome to life, right? I mean, nothing off the shelf comes out perfect, and that's the whole point. I use Linux at home every day. There's an update. That's the way it is, and I'm totally fine. Once in a while, I reboot and done deal. It works, okay? So that's about it. That's really amazing. Yeah, and you're right. I remember IPPs in the past were maybe they didn't give us the result that most people expected to have, but this really looks like everything came together really well. And you guys are, I mean, you pretty much have the boots on the ground already. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, the networking, we worked on the standard. We're involved in the regulatory checking. We got NASA grants and NASA
Yeah.
funding to test the new standard, to help people understand what they have to do to get their data into the system. That's what we've been working on. And we've done it with not many people. We've done it because we have a lot of knowledge of what was needed and how to actually deal with this complex problem, and not have to do a lot of learning from it, because we've already thought it through and understood what the effects were.
Well, that's true. Because, I mean, you guys have been doing this for a long time too. So you don't have to write everything at the last minute or anything like that. That's true.
No, normally it's like, most companies would have to have people who haven't worked deeply in the industry would have to learn. They'd have to get in a room. They'd all have to come to a common understanding. They would wind up debating things that both sides don't really have all the facts. And, the bottom line is when we have a conversation and we talk about solving these things, we can usually have a solution in 24 hours that we know is 80%. And that just saves us a lot of time in dealing
Mhm.
with, what goes on, and then try to convert that into software and then try to
Yes.
communicate that to a software engineer. So this is our strength, right? And then of course having the knowledge of what's needed. And I'm very proud of my team. I can't tell you, I have people who have believed and have been with us. Megan Conway's been with us for like 8 years, and she's still here, and she's been through a
Yeah.
lot. Oh,
Yes.
and she's still here, and it's a big deal to me. It's a big deal because I don't know why I'm still here.
I'm so glad you said that, and I think that's something that's probably not well understood out there in the public. AAM might be super exciting, but guys, you have no idea how difficult it is. You have no idea how many times, personally, I want to hang up my hat and go, "This is going nowhere," and yet here we are every single day. I mean, I question the validity of what we're doing. I know it's going to happen, but with or without me, I don't know. And sometimes I'm just like, "Wow, it's incredible. We're still here." You and I were talking a year ago about this. Well, years ago we were talking about this. I met also Chris, same thing. We all
Chris
have these
Cesar, I wanna
conversations.
give him a call, and Tom Phronix, and Mike Hunter,
And
and
Tom. Yep.
Pavin, and
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Brian Thayer. These guys are behind the scenes
Yes.
following a crazy man, right?
Yeah.
And they've done great. And again,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
tribute to our military experience because 'cause we've done it
Yes.
in the military. A lot of us were in the military,
Yeah.
and,
True.
we used to have to set up operations with weather for events like moving the, Gitmo prisoners out of Afghanistan and making sure they didn't wind up landing in an island that they didn't have security because of bad weather that wasn't predicted. That would have
Bingo.
been the end of my career.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
If people remember, 1991, I think, well, no, it was the first time the Iranian hostages were tried to get swooped out of
Right.
Tehran in
Right.
'79, and remember it had a dust
Yep.
storm and the aircraft
Yep.
crashed and the whole
Yeah.
thing blew up and it didn't get Carter, that was part of why he didn't get reelected.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
that was a weather screw up,
It was a
and,
weather screw up. Yeah. Yeah.
it was a weather prediction screw up, and those people unfortunately didn't have a career after that. But, this is what we learn through our doing in doing really tough things, and this is now what we're bringing to commercialize.
Yeah, talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, and also just to highlight again, it's really that passion that gets you back every day doing the same thing, not knowing what the results are going to be, hoping we're all going in that same direction. Certainly not knowing what the financial results are. 'Cause I have no idea what that looks like. But it's exciting. It's going to happen one way or the other. This is going to happen, whether you like it or not. Plans have already been made. Billions of dollars have already flowed into this, and we're there every single day.
May not look
Crazy.
exactly like we all think, but it's gonna look enough like what I think to take advantage of what we're doing,
Yeah.
and it's gonna help
Yeah.
the whole aviation industry in the
Yeah.
end because we're gonna be
It
pushing
will.
this concept, and that's part of the air traffic management system,
Yeah.
modernization. We need to make sure if anyone's listening in Peraton, we need to make sure that this
Yes.
weather stuff is getting into that plan because
Yes.
otherwise you're just gonna have the same old. And I wrote the next gen weather ops in 2005. And
Mm.
let's just say we've had one program in 20 years, and all it did was take 3 weather pipes and bring them together into one, and that's it. There's been very little technology, and we gotta make sure we don't make that mistake again because what we're doing could be integrated back into the ATC system, and we could be
Yeah.
modernizing the weather component of this beyond what people can imagine. So, I guess that was my public service message right there.
But that was very yeah, it's actually good. I was gonna ask you what would you like people to walk away with today, but I think that's maybe the point we can make is that advanced air mobility is not just about the future. This is also technologies that are coming up now that some of them have been worked on for a long time, but it's also serving the way airplanes fly, helicopters fly. Remember Kobe Bryant taking off in the middle of a, pea soup, which you shouldn't do, ending upside down, crashing into no. So the technology exists. Now it's a question of all you guys out there have tried to put it all together and everything. And now we have a way to implement this. The repercussions are beyond our industry. And so this is something that we need to highlight that a lot. Heck, I'm going to write an article on that with your help. That's how
I
I
would
look at
love
it.
I love it. I love I love helping people understand what's possible because a lot
Yeah.
of people
Yeah.
don't know what is possible here with weather and weather data and weather information because they only know what they know. And we haven't done a good job of operationalizing our science. And
No.
I mean, we try hard. I think a lot of it is people don't believe in funding it, and then they've had enough mistakes or start and stops that they just become, they just say, "Nah, I don't want to put any more money in that." But we've really this is doable. This is 2026, not 1985. So
1985. Yeah. Especially for,
we're still doing METARs in the same code we did in '90s because we had to fit it in a teletype. So now we make all these pilots that are new that coming up to be drone pilots. We force them to learn how to read METAR code or TAF code when they don't even have to read it because it's all been converted already in
yeah.
other ways. So I mean,
Should,
let's stop
should we
this.
scare people and tell them that DOS is still used with a lot of equipment? And those of you who don't know what DOS is, DOS, well, go and look it up, scratch your head, and yeah, start being scared. Or dispatchers, operation dispatchers still print out things and put it on a big table and look at it.
In a dot
Ha,
matrix printer.
in a dot matrix. If you don't know what a dot matrix printer is, look it up. This is stuff that we used 40 years ago. I haven't
And
used
our
one
weather
in,
code is all written in Fortran 77.
my gosh, you know what? I studied on that. I actually, oh, that was in the 80s. Fortran
Yeah, 70s and
77.
80s, and you might as well just have it on a tablet coming out of the vaults in the Middle East because that's how old it is, and yet it's really hard for us to transition. We're working
Yeah,
on
it
it
is.
now with
It
AI
is.
and
It
ML, and
is.
we're getting but it's you try to change something like that, it's
Well,
you know,
it has to happen.
or
One way or the other, it has to happen. So we can do it now painlessly or do it later with a lot of force, and it's going to be painful. So I'm so excited that you guys are working on it. I'm so excited that True Weather is still around after all these years. And you're certainly like a force to be reckoned with in the industry. And Don, I truly mean it. Every time I sit down and I talk to you, I learn something else. And I'm thinking, what more can I learn about weather? Well, obviously, a lot more. So I really want to thank you for being such a gracious host on this episode again on the podcast, basically, because this is your third time here or more. I can't remember. And always an open invitation to have you back whenever. I do want to hear about what's going to happen next. So that's your invitation to show up soon again.
Yeah, no, I first of all, thank you for the conversation. It's not only educational, hopefully, for people to see how things are moving, it's also my therapy. I feel better about talking about
It's
this. You're
like,
like my therapist. It's like you're my live on-air therapist, and there's a
that's
lot of
so
weather
well
people
said.
that probably watch this and think, "Oh, it feels better." So I want you to think of yourself as a public service for meteorologists out there who feel like they've been kicked and yelled
My
at
God.
and told that they're weather liars. So this is good.
That's the best thing I've heard all year, and hopefully all year that's the best thing I've heard. But you know what? It is true. It's very therapeutic to be here and to be able to talk to you guys and to understand what's going on out there and to somehow, just go, here's a little bit of information. But no, thank you, Don. I
I
always
thank you,
appreciate it.
really, and look forward to having our next conversation. All right.
Absolutely will do. And for you guys out there, let us know what you think. If you've learned anything, if obviously you've learned something, unless you're such a wizard. And if you are, please talk to us. But please like, share, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts. What do you think is happening? How is this going to impact your lives? Let us know about it. Thank you, Don, again. And then we'll see you next week again.